Hello. This is probably my fourth or fifth, I can't count, podcast for Casual Survivor. There is so much for me to cover, so let's get right into it. I've just come off the back of the first joint tribal council I have attended in this season, and it's safe to say that it was jam-packed, filled with drama, content, just overall buffoonery, and so I'm very excited to unpack everything and, express my side of the story. Also, I will make sure to answer every single question that you guys have asked me. Thank you for them as per usual. I'll also cover the emotional and captivating discussions that I had about Christchurch events and escapism that managed to find their way into last episode. Alrighty. So first things first, that tribal council. Safe to say I was shook, gooped, gagged, overall it was a lot, right? First things first, when we lost, I was so sad because we lost by such a small margin. And so if I had gone home at this tribal council, I would have been so aghast because just leaving under such pretense would have really stung. Furthermore, just going home pre-merge would have stung as well, especially when I have such a reputation, and personally, this is the first org where my success actually is going to personally mean something. All of the other games I've played have felt less impersonal than this one, and that's probably because I can separate game and emotions in past games, but in Casual Survivor, especially in this season, there are so many weaving ties, like there are so many strings that are attaching me to certain aspects of the server. So yes, I can definitely feel the weight on my shoulders to perform well. But anyways, the challenge we lost, and honestly, we probably would have lost it anyway. It was not fun, the fact that I was I wasn't able to participate. That was not fun because I was at work, and I was looking forward to Scattergrees for a long, long time because the way that Casual Survivor runs Scattergrees is different to the way that other orgs do. In other orgs, if Scattergrees was played, what typically happens is that in a player's confessional or submission channel, they would end up making a big list, and then those would be tallied via points, whereas at Casual Survivor, here things are run a little bit differently. And so I was very excited to participate in it, not only because it was a different take on a challenge that I was familiar with, but also because the devil inside me wanted to break and corrupt the game, because the way I perceive Casual Survivor's Scattergrees is that it's more so a time and speed and top of the brain mind sort of thing, whereas in other orgs you can, perhaps think about it more, and you can really put effort into and think at the back or, in the middle of your mind, if you will, as to your answers. And so the fact that everything happened so quickly, and the fact that I wasn't able to participate really sucked, but it is what it is, and we lost, so alas. But if anything came of that challenge, it's that I still managed to carry my weight despite being at work, which was cool, because the only reason that we nearly tied, or the reason we tied, and the only reason that we came close to being immune, was because of me, dare I say it. Very humble of me, I know, but when have I not been unhumble in this game? And further, the challenge was interesting because it meant I could talk about the ways in which Scattergrees has a few holes in it, and the fact that, for example, you can challenge things in Scattergrees on Casual Survivor, that aspect alone was something I wanted to nitpick, and I'm glad I did, because I truly think that Casual Survivor is going to perceive categories in a different way, because in my mind, why would you not challenge everything? There's no reason not to. And I know that it's inconvenient for production, but if you're going to give me the option, then of course I'm going to challenge everything. It just makes sense in order to do that. And also, I think that Scattergrees on Casual Survivor also has more ties, and the likelihood of people tying is greater because of the snappy nature that it happens, that you've got to just think of the first thing that comes to mind instead of actually letting all your thoughts marinate sort of thing. So yes, wrapping everything up when it comes to the challenge in the last episode, overall, sad we lost, and it felt really, really bitter. And I was really bitter about it too. Because, yes, as I say, if I was to go home off the back of that, I would never have let it down. Anyways, after the vote, it was indeed announced that we would be attending a joint tribal council, and I shouldn't have put it past Casual Survivor because the amount of hosts that are always high and, love the good old Kush, I should have expected that a few joints would have been coming my way, and I predicted this, so I was completely content with the fact that we were going to be going to tribal council with the Kamisaki tribe, or whatever tribe I'm in. I honestly cannot pronounce the names of the tribes, and that's on me, and that's a failure of mine, and that is honestly just a cultural insensitivity that I need to work on. Anyways, yes, I was very pleased to be able to talk to John, Avery, and Riley, RIP, but overall, I knew that because they were together the entire time, that they would be sticking together. And so when I first approached the round, I thought to myself, there just needs to be any way that I can find a crack. And the crack came when Avery proved to be a tough nut to crack, funnily enough. The crack was that Avery was tough to crack. I feel like Avery doesn't have a very good first impression, and the first few instances that you DM someone do really set the tone for your entire game relationship, or just your relationship in general, dare I say. Like, I take my relationship with Kathy, for example, and the fact that Kathy and I were on the same page from the jump, and the fact that I offered her a day one alliance, I think it really means a lot. And it's a testament, and it's great evidence to how the first few impressions that you make are the ones that last. And Avery, unfortunately, hasn't made the best impressions with people, especially with Kathy, who took offense to the fact that Avery said that California was gross. Which, I mean, California kind of is gross because it's American, and America sucks. If you're listening to this, then I apologize for the fact that you live in America. Anyway, overall, on the topic of Avery, Avery is someone that I think could be easily dragged to the end, but that's obviously very premature for me to say. There's obviously a lot of game left to be played, but yes, Avery didn't make the best first impression, and as a result was the person that was being apparently targeted from that side of this new joint 6-person tribe. And so, originally, from the outset, one would expect Toffee to be the person that would be making the decision, because Toffee was the only person that didn't have someone that had previously been in a tribe with. There's the burp. Kathy and myself were aligned. Obviously we are, because we were in the same tribe, is what I'm getting at. John, Avery, and Riley were all together. Toffee was on his own. That's what I'm getting at. And so the fact that Toffee was a lone wolf not only meant that it was easy to single out Toffee, but it also placed Toffee with a lot of power, because it meant that they were a swing vote, you know what I mean? Which was the natural mindset and the natural thing that people would expect. And so I knew coming into this vote that I had a lot of work to do, because I had already several obstacles to overcome. The fact that on paper it would make sense for Toffee to join the other three and perhaps, split votes between Kathy and I. That was a worry of mine. But overall, I was just worried about the fact that I could go home, because I don't have an idol, I don't have any protection. And at the start of last round, I was simply fearing for my life, because I know that I am a big player, I know that I have pre-established relationships, and I know that people know I am involved in Casual Survivor, and as a result, I have just some insider knowledge in some senses, and that is something I plan definitely on capitalizing later on in the game, and that's probably something people are going to be fearful of. But what my main goal of the last round was not only to establish myself as a social player, and not only to establish myself as someone that could be on your side instead of against you, but also I just wanted to feel people out, and I, as I say, wanted to ensure that I was not the vote. So yes, I've already talked about Avery, who honestly I actually kind of love now. Avery and I have talked things out, and I honestly think that starting our relationship on a foundation of such deep and emotional discussion has really propelled us to then talk more emotionally and in depth about in-game things, which I think is something not only productive and is an unexpected consequence of talking about something so emotional like the mosque shootings. But it gives me promise, because someone like Avery is a complex and unpredictable player, and the fact that I work Survivor, in my Survivor mind, I work on the premise of wanting to mitigate and have as fewer possibilities as possible. That was bad grammar, and it was bad syntax actually, but moving on. The fact that Avery is a wild card is something I plan to use to my advantage until it's time to cut Avery, because honestly, when you burn someone once in this game, you might as well burn them 1,000 times, because there's no... if you burn a bridge, then your feet are going to get wet if you try and cross the river, and I plan on staying bone dry this entire season. So yes, I've talked about Avery. On the topic of John played last round really interestingly. At the top of the round, John was saying how he wanted to flip, but then at other times, John would say how he wanted to vote out Toffee. And of course he's going to say that, because no one's ever going to say to me that they want to target Kathy or me, because naturally people are going to assume that we are aligned. The thing is, now that people think that Kathy and I are so closely tight-knit, it does make me concerned a little bit, because alliances are more powerful when they're secret, but more on that later. Anyways, on the topic of John again, he played the round interestingly, but in hindsight, it makes a lot of sense, because he played the round knowing that he did not have a vote, because at Glacier Ridge, the reason he didn't have a vote was because he was cursed, according to what he ended up losing, or I should say winning in my case, because it benefited me for sure. At the Glacier. Anyways, so yes, the fact that John didn't have a vote explains a lot of things to me. Largely, it explains his approach to the round, and overall, it explains how he was a little bit frantic, because he simply didn't want the vote to be on him, because he knew that he had no voting power. I also think the reason the vote in that last tribal council was so chaotic is because John didn't have a vote, and so it immediately ruled out the possibility of a 3-3 tie, and it also meant that there was never going to be a rock draw. And John was smart to keep that information close to his chest, because as soon as I found out that John was cursed and that he wasn't going to vote, I knew that Toffee, Kathy, and I were certain to stick together, and I knew that our plan was going to work. That doesn't mean I still wasn't nervous, because gosh, I was so nervous. I was at work and I had my phone on the table, and I was like, holy shit, I'm going to get voted out here. And it would suck to get voted out pre-merge. Can I tell you again how it would suck to be voted out pre-merge? Anyway, I just don't think I'm destined for a pre-merge exit ever. I just don't think that's for me. Yes, so back to John. I really don't know where he lies, and it's a different sort of unpredictable, because on the topic of Avery, I think I can predict that he's unpredictable, whereas compared to John, I just think he's unpredictable. You know what I mean? And I want to mitigate as many risks as possible, and John feels like he has his head on his shoulders far better and far more secure than Avery does. So yes, I'm certainly worried about John's potential to be a good big player. I'm also worried about the fact that John and LP have that pre-existing Glacier Ridge relationship, but it's not like that really matters to me, because the only people I care about are Kathy and Toffee, I suppose, at this stage. The fact that we are in joint tribal phase is something I'm still definitely trying to get over, because it's a lot. It's a lot to deal with. And overall, it meant that it was a very chaotic vote, because I hadn't met any of those three people before that tribal council. And I just hate having to talk strategy with people that I haven't pre-existingly sorted a personal bond with. So yes, that was certainly a hurdle for me, but the fact that I got through it is a testament to how good I managed to play the round, I suppose. But yes, I must admit that I certainly benefited from the fact that John lost his vote at the last tribal. Okay, I took a wee break, but I am back. Where I was that I was breaking down how I had just met John, Avery, and Riley. The final person is Riley. Riley was someone who right away I pegged... No, sorry. Riley is someone immediately that I determined was a very strategic and social player. Right away I got the vibe that they were dominant, they were domineering. You know, I just really... See, now I've realised that I've said pegging and dom in the same sentence. Disregard it all. Long story short, Riley is someone that I knew was kind of like me and was certainly a formidable player. Riley also felt like the glue that was holding John and Avery together. And I also realised that Riley was the person that was finessing the most information out of me. And so overall, I was very aghast by the fact that, I just knew that Riley had to go, and even though Avery felt like the obvious choice to vote out, Avery was the easier vote, Riley felt like the correct vote for me, and I was aghast at the... sorry, I keep forgetting what my aghast sentence is going to be because LP keeps messaging me. But that's something I'll discuss. LP is someone who I will discuss at the end of the podcast. Anyways, so yeah, I knew right away that Riley had to go, and I never lost track of that because overall, it just felt like Riley was trying to control the entire episode, or at least the entire tribal council, and that was a vibe I did not enjoy. I was aghast at the fact that... sorry, it's because LP is talking about RDU, my radio station. Anyway, I was drink every time I say aghast. I was aghast at the fact that Riley was so bold with some of her strategic moves and just some of the things that she said. I was like, wow, that is a really crafty thing to say. I just realized that Riley had a way with words that meant that she was giving away far much more, or I was giving away far much more information than she was, and I think that Riley is honestly a really, really good player. So, spoilers, the fact that Riley was sent home this last episode just is music to my ears, and there are a few reasons why. Firstly, I feel like Riley was a top EGIC contender, and dare I say it, but I think Riley would have done really, really well had the tribes not switched at all. Riley is the sort of player that is able to influence people really quickly, and, you know, obviously got a handle of me somehow. Obviously that didn't work out in the end, but for a moment there, I was certainly under Riley's spell, and I'm very glad that I was able to snap out of it, because I'm unsure at my, long-term game longevity. Like, the likelihood of me doing well in this game would have been a whole lot harder had Riley been here instead of Avery. And so, yeah, overall, I'm glad that Riley went home. But at the same time, I know how it feels to be such a formidable player and to want something org-wise so much and then to be snipped away. So in that sense, it really sucks because my success is determinant on the failure of others, and that's the bittersweet nature of Survivor. But yes, overall, the fact that John lost his vote, the fact that Avery was the obvious target, those two things, and the fact that John was also considering flipping the most, meant overall that Riley was the person we targeted, and I'm very glad that we did. The other person that I had newly met this round was Toffee. Toffee is someone from the Blue Tribe, which immediately was a positive for me because I knew that going into this swap, that the Green Tribe was the one with the most people, and so just numerically it made sense for me to side with Toffee and instead not side with John, Avery, and Riley. But also, I don't want to have to vote out people that are on my tribe, especially in a joint tribal situation. If you're voting out the people that are on your tribe, then if you go to tribal council again, there are even fewer people that you can target. You know what I mean? And so the sure thing that I know is that if I end up at tribal council again, that perhaps I could even throw Toffee under the bus, because Toffee and LP, I know for certain, have a very strong relationship. Anyway, the way that the vote panned out did so in such a way where I think I can take a lot of the credit, but overall I plan to push Kathy under the bus a little bit, sorry Kathy, in regards to the way this vote played out, because yeah, I just think that I don't want such blood on my hands. This is totally a huge move, and the fact that Riley has already been eliminated, and the fact that, such a big move happened when at the start of the round it looked like myself, Kathy, and Toffee were in danger, but yet by the end of the round, Riley was the one that went home. That was really cool. Also, I was not too happy about the fact that I received a vote. It's the second tribal council that I have received a vote, and I honestly don't know with complete certainty if Avery or Riley was the person that voted that way. I think that I want to say that Riley was the person who voted for me, and in that sense, it makes me very happy, because if Riley was the person that voted for me, then it means that 2 rounds in a row, the person that has voted for me was the person that went home. So that's 2 wins for me and 2 losses for the people that were eliminated. Yes. Overall, I was just so happy with the outcome of that vote, and I'm glad that it's happened on casual Survivor turf as well, because I think that it just proves to me a lot of things, and obviously my success in this org in particular is something that I'm going to take personally, and it's a really interesting dynamic because it's the first time I'm ever going to be taking an org seriously because of personal reasons. And the only personal reasons that I have are that I've been so ingrained in this server's history, I suppose, and I have something to prove to all of you guys, so I hope I can do that. But overall, the main thing I want to prove is to myself, because for the longest time, I've been analysing the players of this server in particular, and so if I can't walk the walk that I talk, the talk of, you know what I mean? If I can't match up to the players that have come before me, then all of my critiques are rather baseless, because, if I can't prove that I'm good, then why is any of my critique or ejic valid? Because it takes one to know one, and if I'm not someone to know, then, what's the point in me, doing so well? Or what's the point in me, ejicking if I can't prove to you guys that I indeed can do well? You know what I mean? So there's a wee dichotomy there that I hope I can personally, because it's personal, there's a wee dichotomy there that I hope I can explore and kind of manipulate, because as I say, I do have pre-existing casual Survivor knowledge, but on the other hand, that comes with the fact that I have perhaps something more to prove. Anyways, that basically wraps up all of my thoughts about the game for that last tribal council. The other thing I wanted to touch on was how I had a really intense discussion about the mosque shootings with Avery, and the reason I play orgs... Okay, let's get into it. The reason I play orgs is indeed for escapism. It's far removed from my actual life, because I know that in real life, people don't act this way, and people aren't always plotting against me, and that people aren't distrusting of me. You know what I mean? And so I come on these orgs for escapism, because I know that it's a new world, and it's a new system that I have to, do well in, or at least it feels a little bit more driven in some senses, because I know the direction of the game. Whereas in the real world, perhaps there aren't as many sure things. You know what I mean? In this game, it's sure that someone's going to go home every round, whereas in the real world, I don't know what's going to happen next. So I come to orgs for escapism, and I obviously know that it's hard to turn to orgs for escapism when the way that you succeed in orgs is by talking about yourself and your life. So it's funny because the exact things I want to escape from are the exact things that people I meet are into and want to hear about. And one of those things is obviously the mosque shootings, because it's such an intense and it was such a worldwide known event. And so it makes a lot of sense, the fact that is the first thing that Avery approached me about, because, you know, that's just something that was to his knowledge. You know, he knew that happened in Christchurch. And so it makes a lot of sense for him to be like, oh, well, what about the mosque shootings? You know what I mean? Like, it just makes a lot of sense for it to happen. And so I understand and I can respect and appreciate the fact that we talked about it, but at the same time, it's difficult because I come to these orgs for escapism, so perhaps I want to share about my life, but I don't want to necessarily share such emotional and deep thoughts about my life. There's a line, and I don't necessarily know if Avery crossed that line, but it certainly didn't help the fact that it was like the first conversation we had. Because, I mean, if Kathy was to have that conversation with me, then I'd feel a little bit better about it because we already have that pre-existing relationship. Whereas on the topic of Avery, the fact that it was the first thing kind of really took me aback. And I was, as some would say, aghast. But yes, overall, looking back on it, I'm glad we had that conversation because, as I say, it has proved to, you know, be a really interesting foundation for our relationship. And I hope that in the future we can talk more in depth about more topics. My other thing as well is that I hope that when Avery watches or sees all this confessional stuff back, that it isn't taken personally. It was a really wholesome and really captivating discussion from my end, and perhaps the only reason that I took such an emotional response to it was because of the fact that it was so sudden and I expected a different thing from Avery. I think I was more taken aback by the sudden nature of the discussion rather than the topic of conversation. Anyways, I'd also like to thank production for the way they handled it. I'm going to keep my confessionals open to every single person because I feel like I want everyone to, I don't know, experience the org that I'm experiencing, and it feels a little hypocritical of me to want the best for the season and for the org if I'm not prepared to front all of it. I'm the sort of person that if I say it, I mean it, and I'm not afraid to, so yeah, that's just the way it is. But yes, Avery, if you do see all of this back, then know that it's with good intention that I say all of this, and that I hope we can, you know, build something further, and that if you're seeing this and I voted you out, I'm sorry, but if you voted me out, oh well, or, you know, if we ended up being far into the season, that it simply proved to be an interesting and unexpected foundation for what was hopefully a long-standing relationship. Alrighty, the final thing I wanted to cover in this podcast, which is already quite long, were all of the questions that you guys asked me, and then I will talk about my future predictions for the season. Alrighty, first few things. Let me see. How does it feel, the fact that I am in the final 12? I am feeling amazing. I was worried that I was going to be eliminated. My name was thrown around a lot in that last vote, and I mean, it's evidenced by the fact that I received a vote, so there you go. Obviously, my paranoia was not for nothing. And I honestly think as well, the fact that myself, Toffee, and Kathy were so paranoid, antsy, and chaotic, I think it proved in our favour, because John, Avery, and Riley perhaps rested on their laurels a bit too much, and perhaps they expected things to go out their way a little bit more than we did. And so we worked harder, we worked more. And we knew what there was at stake, whereas Avery, Riley, and John perhaps didn't have that same sense of urgency about them, and I think that simply reflected itself in the final vote tally. But yes, side note to the fact that it feels amazing that I'm in the final 12. What else is there? I'm worried about the fact that I might starve to death. I would hate to starve in this org. That would be so embarrassing, especially when that's just such a silly way to be eliminated. I would much rather be voted out than starve. I don't think anyone has ever starved either, so that would really, really suck. But I honestly don't think that's going to happen. I think that we're either going to win a challenge or the tribes are going to switch before anything of the sort happens. So I'm not holding my breath about the fact that starvation is something in a few rounds a possibility. Okay, what else is there? What do I believe in? I've already answered that. I believe in myself. Describe the game of every player you've interacted with so far in 3 words. Alrighty. I think my relationship with Goa was first boot material, because Goa simply gave up, and I don't know how I felt about that, and it meant that Goa was an easy vote. Chimp, chaotic, schemy monkey. Honestly, I wish all the best for Chimp. I think Chimp is an icon, and I hope she does really well in Historg. I played Historg. That was the season I immediately played after playing Ladviver, and so I really hope that Chimp succeeds. Chimp is also playing with Yale and Locke in that season, and Noah. Like, there are so many people in that org, so it's really cool to see, and I hope that Chimp succeeds. But in the context of this org, Chimp was really chaotic and unpredictable, and was giving me all of my Benny OTTN vibes. So yes, I mean, every season needs someone like that, and it just so happened to be Chimp. Dump is hard to place, because Dump is someone that I have thrown under the bus, but at the same time, Dump is someone that I think I could need. Only because Dump was on my original tribe, Kamansky. I remember the name of the tribe, it was Kamansky. But yes, overall, I think that Dump is a hard person for me to place, and I'm excited to see where my relationship unravels with Dump. Kathy, former number 1 are my 3 words for Kathy. Kathy is someone who I am always going to trust, and I'm probably never going to write the name down of. When I say that I'm never going to write someone's name down, I don't necessarily mean it, because I'll write anyone's name down if it means I survive. But on the topic of Kathy, she's a sweetheart, she's lovely, and I wish her all the best for Big Brother Coven. Who else? Bev. Bev is analytical and calculated. But at the same time, I worry that Bev's under-the-radar nature is what is going to bite me in the ass later. I'm sorry. I don't know where that came from. Anyways, I'm not going to edit that out because that's just so funny. But Bev is someone that I hope I can rely on, but I know that Bev is playing a really stealthy and really calculated game, so it's something that I need to take note of as well. That covers everyone in Kamansky. John is also hard to place, but I also feel like he's a little bit more of a target in my eyes. Avery is like 3rd place material. I could definitely see Avery being eliminated in the next 2 rounds, but at the same time as I could see Avery go home soon, I could see Avery go all the way. We'll see where it happens, but right now I really do enjoy Avery, which is an interesting turn of events, right? LP, my 3 words are new number 1, because LP is a New Zealander. Safe to say I shit my fucking pants when I found out that LP lives in my city, and the fact that LP alone is like going to the festival I'm going to in the weekend, the fact that we might even meet up, I'm shook, absolutely shook. Thanks to production, thank you for hosting, and thank you for letting LP play alongside me, because the fact that you've let 2 New Zealanders on the same season is like an instant alliance. I can't snap my fingers very well with this hand. But yes, LP is someone that I totally plan to go far with. But on the other hand, Toffee is someone that I worry is LP's actual ally or LP's actual number one. In my mind, I think that Toffee and LP are really, really close. And it worried me that if Kathy was eliminated, for example, that LP would be the person to replace her, and then I would be outnumbered by Toffee and LP. So I'm glad that LP is now on the other tribe. And I'm further glad that LP is a New Zealander, because that's a potential ally, and LP has already told me that he has an idol, but apparently it accrues him a vote every single tribal council. He doesn't play it. So yes, information is power in this game, and I think having LP on my side, and the fact that I have LP kind of as a built-in alliance already, simply because we're from the same city, which never happens, I think that's something that's going to push me forward in this game too. But also, I'm glad that LP has gone to Glacier Ridge, and I never thought I would say that, because the Glacier really worries me, because as I've said in past confessionals, that's just an experience that people have that I don't. And so, yeah, I just want to mitigate as many relationships and experiences as possible that I'm not a part of. But all of those thoughts flew out of the window as soon as LP told me that he has a half idol. Or he hasn't told me he has a half idol, but Toffee told Kathy, and Kathy told me that LP has a half idol. But now that LP has a fully fledged idol, I'm absolutely loving it. And I hope that LP and I can go really far. I think I've covered everyone. If I have missed someone, then I suppose that's just a testament to my bad relationship with them. On the topic of Victor and Clay and Dump, though, I've been kind of throwing them under the bus. And that's something that's going to bite me in the ass for sure, because, yeah, it's totally giving me my Lad Viva feels, where I just threw Cat and Angel under the bus after the swap, which ended up being a very interesting and turbulent decision, and that's something I'm doing again now, gently. If I do go to Tribal Council again, then it's going to probably be with a different other tribe, or at least I hope it is. And so Victor and Clay and Dump, I'm going to at least see one of them. And so overall, I know that as soon as I get back into DMs with them, I need to cover my bases and, sweep up the tracks that I've made, because I've been throwing Victor and Clay under the bus, saying, oh, well, they probably hate me because, I hosted them and they probably want me out. And I've also been throwing Dump under the bus simply because I was not aligned with him that intensely. If Dump was eliminated, I would honestly kind of love it, because it would lower the threat level that OG Kamansky has, and it would also mean that one less person that I previously had talked shit about would be gone. So yes, that's all of that. I feel like this is getting really, really long, so to quickly answer the other questions, I love my city because of the drinking water. Pick one player from this game and choose a few songs that would be on a soundtrack for them. If I was to choose a soundtrack for Chimp, it would be chaotic songs like Darude Sandstorm. If I was to make one for Kathy, it would probably be Queen, because she is one. And if I was to pick one for Bev, it would be like Daft Punk or like Benny Benassi, because it feels like really calculated computer music, and that's what I think is running through Bev's brain 24/7. I'm sure I could say this for every other player, but yeah, this confessional is getting very, very long. So with that, I will leave it there. I'm so excited for my future in this game, because LP being a New Zealander, Riley going home, Kathy still being in the game, and a green going home, that's 4 fantastic things. My only worry is that I starve to death and everything is for naught. Fingers crossed that doesn't happen, but yes. Thanks for listening if you've made it this far, and I will catch you in the next podcast, keeping it casual. Bye!